The crimson stain on the bronze-plated musculature was a grim herald. A deep gash inflicted by a Persian scimitar breached the Spartan's flesh. This was not the immediate threat. The true danger, invisible and insidious, lay within the wound itself. In the Spartan world, lacking germ theory or pharmaceutical antibiotics, a simple breach of the skin often initiated a countdown to systemic failure. Without intervention, pathogenic organisms would multiply, leading to sepsis and an agonizing end. This was the impossible problem. Spartan medical practices, while rudimentary by modern standards, relied on observation and inherited knowledge. Their understanding of internal mechanisms was limited, yet pragmatic approaches were adopted for visible injuries. Battlefield first aid often involved immediate cleansing. Rivers or fresh water sources were utilized to flush open wounds, mechanically removing some foreign debris and surface bacteria, a crude but essential first step. Herbal remedies provided the primary form of internal and external medication. Plants like willow bark, a source of salicin, offered analgesic and anti-inflammatory properties, while others were applied directly to wounds for perceived healing. For severe, hemorrhaging wounds, cauterization was employed. Heated metal applied directly to the injury served to seal blood vessels, preventing excessive blood loss, and, as a secondary effect, sterilizing the immediate wound surface by extreme heat. Wounds were subsequently dressed with clean linen or wool strips. While not sterile, these coverings protected the injury from further environmental contamination, creating a physical barrier against dirt, flies, and other external threats. The daily regimen of a Spartan soldier inherently contributed to their overall resilience. A demanding physical training, the Agoge, built robust immune systems. However, even the strongest constitution could be overwhelmed by virulent pathogens. For internal ailments or less visible infections, the Spartans relied on purgatives and emetics. The belief was that illness stemmed from an imbalance of humors or accumulation of harmful substances which could be expelled from the body. Surgical intervention was rudimentary and dangerous. Amputations, for instance, were a last resort for limbs clearly compromised by gangrene. The process was agonizing and often led to death from shock, blood loss, or subsequent infection. The communal living within the barrack system, while fostering camaraderie, also facilitated the rapid spread of infectious diseases. A single sick individual could quickly compromise the health of an entire syssitia, impacting military readiness. Despite their physical prowess, a Spartan's survival from a severe infection often depended on sheer chance and their body's inherent capacity to fight off the invading organisms. There was no systemic understanding of microbial action. The rigorous selection process of the Spartan system meant that individuals with inherent weaknesses or chronic conditions were unlikely to reach adulthood. This created a population with a baseline physical hardiness, but not immunity to novel threats. Contrast this with the more developed medical schools of Athens, where Hippocratic physicians began to theorize on disease causality and employ more systematic diagnostic approaches, though still lacking the microbial framework. Unlike the emerging medical thought in other Greek city-states, Spartan medical knowledge remained deeply practical and empirical. Theoretical understandings of disease transmission, vital to combating unseen threats, were largely absent from their curriculum. Their system was optimized for physical prowess and visible injury management. It provided robust armor against blades and arrows, but offered little defense against the microscopic assailants that could transform a simple scratch into a fatal malady. Even a minor infection, left unchecked, could escalate. Localized inflammation would spread, leading to cellulitis, then potentially lymphangitis, and ultimately a systemic bloodstream infection, known today as septic shock. For a Spartan succumbing to such an infection, the experience was one of progressive debilitation. Fever, chills, delirium, and organ failure would mark the slow, inevitable decline, often in full view of their comrades. The institutional response to untreatable illness was typically stoic acceptance. There were no specialized medical facilities for long-term care or complex interventions, only a recognition that some battles against an invisible enemy were unwinnable. Beyond individual casualties, epidemics could decimate entire formations, rendering the most disciplined phalanx vulnerable. The lack of sanitation infrastructure in military camps further amplified this threat. turning victories into demographic losses. Thus, the Spartans vaunted physical perfection and rigorous training, while formidable on the battlefield, offered a fragile bulwark against the silent, persistent assault of pathogenic microorganisms. This was the ultimate design flaw in their biological machine. The persistent threat of disease quietly eroded Spartan manpower, while glorious deaths in battle were commemorated. The slow, unseen attrition from infection contributed significantly to their eventual demographic decline, impacting military readiness. This insidious drain on their numbers meant that even victories could be costly, as the subsequent camp diseases or untreated battle wounds claimed more lives than the initial conflict. The system struggled to replenish these unseen losses. For the living, witnessing comrades succumb to a slow, debilitating infection was a stark reminder of their own vulnerability, a psychological burden distinct from the swift, heroic death on the battlefield they were trained to embrace. The very rigidity of the Spartan social and military structure, designed for optimal combat effectiveness, made it resistant to adopting or developing new medical paradigms, even as other city-states showed glimmers of advancement. The collective health of the Spartan polis was therefore constantly under siege from microscopic adversaries. This fundamental vulnerability, unaddressed by their unique system, was a quiet, relentless force undermining their strength. The ideal of the invincible Spartan soldier, honed to physical perfection, was a magnificent construct. Yet beneath the polished bronze and disciplined demeanor lay a biological reality that even the most rigorous training could not overcome. This highlights the inherent paradox. A society engineered for supreme military efficacy struggled to protect its most vital component, the individual soldier's biological integrity, against the smallest, most common threats. The long-term consequence of this medical blind spot was a subtle, yet profound weakening of the Spartan state. Every untreated infection, every epidemic, chipped away at the core strength of their military machine. The very environment they inhabited, from crowded barracks to unhygienic campaign grounds, served as a perpetual incubator for diseases. This constant microbial pressure was a foe as relentless as any Persian army. While other societies might attribute such losses to divine displeasure, the Spartans, with their focus on observable strength, lacked the conceptual tools to understand the invisible mechanisms undermining their collective vitality. Their system was a magnificent clockwork of human dedication and physical engineering. Yet, like a precisely crafted machine lacking lubrication, it was vulnerable to unseen friction and wear, leading to eventual systemic failure. The rigid adherence to tradition, while central to Spartan identity, also hindered the adoption of any nascent medical innovations that might have arisen in other Greek city-states, sealing their fate against microbial threats. In the end, the Spartan soldier, despite their legendary prowess and iron discipline, remained fundamentally a biological organism. Their system, designed to conquer men, could not conquer the unseen forces that ultimately proved to be their most persistent and unconquerable enemy. The legacy of Sparta is one of unparalleled physical and martial excellence, a human system honed to near perfection for war. But what is the true cost of such singular focus when the most profound threats are not steel or strategy, but invisible and biological?